Hi, welcome back to Alba Physiotherapy. Today I wanted to jump on and have a chat to you about something which is really starting to become quite prevalent in the physio world. And I got asked this week by a couple of folk actually, new grads about to qualify. We all remember what that was like. You're trying to get coursework done, you're trying to apply for jobs, you're not sure where you're going to go, what you're going to do, you're not sure which part of physio you want to go for, you're basing it on how you get on your placements, all these kind of things, and who was teaching you on your placement, so you don't know if it's actually what you loved or whether it wasn't, or the type of patients you saw, etc. And it's really hard at that point, isn't it, as a new grad, to think about where should I go. So you really want to think about how can I accelerate my career. So in a lot of cases, I think majority of physios will say to you, look things up, make sure you're well prepped for where you're going, and sort of bring your research of what you've learned into that, practice at home, etc., etc. But I'm going to talk about something that is from a physio that's been a physio for a wee while now, and actually speaking to other physios that have qualified as long as me and even longer. I'm going to talk about a few things that is really important, I would say, and I usually give advice to this for any of my students that are with me that want to know further, is how do you choose between where you should go, what job you should apply for. At the moment, the new grads coming out, thank God, have more options. And there's availability of places to go, which is brilliant. And it means then that you really are in the driving seat to a certain extent as to where you might want to think about going and what you might want to think about doing. And this is crucial. If you really want to think about accelerating your career, you've got to think, where am I going to go in the first two years? Where am I going to go? First few months, where am I going to go? Traditionally, you're usually told, go to National Health Service, go in as a band 5, and then you'll get experience in lots of different areas. And I'm going to tell you today that the difficulty with that is nowadays we've moved on quite a bit from that, and you need to look deeper than just that to see if this or wherever it is you're going to apply to is where you want to go. So I've had a couple of new grad applications in this week to see what we've got going on here and to join the team and things like that. And it's been really interesting chatting to them because they're actually not sure of where they should go. They're 2 out of the 5 in particular very strong on sports physiotherapy. They'd come from that kind of background and thought, well, I'm presuming that's where I want to go, is what one had said when we really got into the depths of chatting. So I'm actually going to go and talk about 6 things today. And that's really important, no matter whether it's sports physio, whether it's respiratory, whether it's care of the elderly, whether it's neuro, whether it's peds, whatever direction you feel you really want to go in. And I'm going to give you 6 things that you really need to think about in order to get the best out of your career, in order to really accelerate your learning. The joke always was before I qualified is, oh, you think you know what you're doing now, wait till you go out and you realise you don't know anything and you've got to start from scratch with physiotherapy. And it is a little bit like that. But actually, there's a lot of things that you need to consider when taking your first job. And I wish I knew probably even 3 or 4 of these before I started. It would have really helped along the way and helped identify and help with progress. You get there eventually, but it is really important to take these on board, regardless of how immersed you want to be in your career, regardless of how good of physio you really want, your drive is to be the best physio you can be. These are the 6 things that I would say are the top priorities. So the first one, look at where you're going, okay? What's the culture like? Now, culture is a big thing. Culture is something that I'm learning more and more about as I run my own practice, in that it's so important to have the right culture. The right culture will mean that you feel comfortable with learning. And to learn, you've got to make mistakes. But you learn from the mistakes. Now, if you've got the right culture, you have the right support system. You've got the right team. And it accelerates your learning. Because if you're learning, but you're worried about making a mistake, which we all are. We're worried about not getting it right, or maybe not making the right decision, or maybe we miss something. If you don't have that support structure around you to really say, look, let's go through this, let's talk through the case study, this is how I would have worked down, how do you think about that? All these kind of things constructively. It's very hard for you to actually learn, but also you need to be able to bring your flavour to it. Because the way I ask questions with patients isn't the way every single physio that I've working for me asks questions. We all bring our own flavour to it. We all bring our own take on it. We all bring our own empathy and type of empathy to our patients. And that's crucial, because if you lose that and it becomes more of a system, it becomes more of a sort of a treadmill of this is what you do, and then you get them out, and then you do this, that, and the other. You lose that advanced clinical reasoning that you've been pushed so hard in uni to develop. You lose that because it becomes more of a systematized way of approaching things, especially, I would say, even in an MSK world. If you've got an opportunity to see a shoulder issue, you want to have more than 3 booklets available to give them for exercises. You want to be able to get in depth in there, get stuck in, get hands-on, really feel what's going on, and be able to chat through that with somebody who's going to encourage your growth. So the culture is really important. Now, culture is affected by so many things, and everywhere you work, I think nowadays, because we have to, goes through such changes, organisational changes. And how an organisation does changes, whether it's done in a supportive role, whether it's done with good communication or maybe not good communication, whether it's driven by costs, whether it's driven by the demands of a service, it might be driven by staffing. That will dictate how much and how little you can do with a patient to a certain degree. And I may ruffle some feathers with that, but that's fact. As a new grad coming out, or as a physiotherapist going into a new realm of physiotherapy, if you're really, really keen on and you're really serious about accelerating your career, you want to be going to somewhere where you can get the time to really go in depth with patients, really make sure you're not missing anything, looking at how different necks move, different shoulders move, getting a feel of different tissues, different joints, all these kind of things. Rehabilitation, what strengthening exercises work, what doesn't, what hands-on, what facilitation works, what doesn't, and really getting to know that. If you've got a good culture, they'll nurture that. They'll nurture your style of learning. They'll nurture the fact, and they'll appreciate the fact you're coming in with fresh eyes. I love when new grads come in because they've got fresh eyes to the service. It keeps it really dynamic. It keeps it current. And it means that we're constantly working on developing the service to the needs of the patients as opposed to the needs of the business, if that makes sense. So really looking at the culture. And the culture, which brings me on to the next point, will develop relationships. So if you've got a good relationship and working relationship with your team, you're part of a team. And as physios, we're trained to be able to work on our own, but also it is crucial to be able to work as part of a team, because 2 sets of eyes are better than 1 in a lot of cases, and more brains coming to the situation is great. And you've got to be in a team that loves that appreciates that works on learning. So for example, here we do 1 session a week. We close the clinic for at least an hour where we brainstorm different things, whether it's marketing, whether it's a communication, it could be hands-on, it could be a new course that somebody's gone on, any of these kind of things. We close the clinic and we put lots of emphasis on developing your growth and learning. Because if you're not learning, your job satisfaction will go down. If you're not learning within the first couple of years or the first couple of months of being in a new post, you're losing out on that vital time where the psychology of our brain, the way our brains work are, when we're in a new scenario, we take everything in. And we're trying to take everything in. So it's the ideal time to really push your skills. So the relationships are important. You need it positive. It's now that you've got more options nowadays, you want to really look to find out, is this going to be the type of positive environment that I'll grow in? Okay, physios are fantastic to work with, but if the constraints of the business or the organization are pushing people, and the people that you're working with, and they're under time constraints, they're really pressed, they won't be able to give you the time that you need as well. So making sure about that, and have that conversation at your interview, or have that conversation even before you sign on the dotted line, because figure that out now on how much support you're going to need, or how much support you want, and who you want to see and what you want to see. My second job, I remember I went into my interview and we had the interview, but I also was really open and honest with two fantastic ladies, and they listened to that. They took that on board. I had a session every week. We alternated between the two. They had a mine of experience, and it was such a positive environment to learn in, that I grew as a person and also grew as a physio, and that was amazing to do that. And that's really important, and that's what we try and do here, because I've learned so much even from that. Definitely bring that forward to here. So look into that, find that out. What are you really getting as part of being an undergrad, as part of being somebody who's coming out, whether you're masters, whether you're undergrad, whatever it is, you're coming out, or you've been in community for 20 years and then you want to do MSK. Where's the support structure? Because everybody's bringing something to the mix, and that's important to appreciate that. Okay, the next thing that I would say is control. And I say this in the best form, really. How much control do you have over your direction? So how much say do you have? And will it be appreciated? So I've said this already, in that it's amazing. One of the things that I think is fascinating with the different variety of places I've worked in is that if you're able to have a say, and you're able to talk about things, and you're able to say, look, this is what I found helps, or can we chat a little bit further about that? I'm not sure about that. And then can I maybe block some time off in my diary to actually go through that a bit more? You get a lot more job satisfaction, because you get to direct things a bit more. And ultimately, that's where you want to be. You want to be able to direct that so you can help the next lot coming through. You can support your team. So having your say, so whether it's where you think the filing system should go, or whether it is how you deal with patients, or how long you need with patients, or whether it's to do with your growth and learning for your tutorials and your one-to-one sessions with your team leads and things like that, you've got to have an ability for some say, at least. And just because you're new to the position, you still have a lot to bring to it from a different aspect. So that's important as well. And I think really looking to that to see, getting a feel for whether that's embraced. Sometimes some systems are quite overloaded already, so it's hard to take on new opinions. So you really want to think about that, and how much say are you going to have, how much control, how much involvement are you going to have in that. One place I've worked in, I went to my bosses and said, look, I'm seeing they were, at the time, we were having really bad winters, and there were young athletes coming in, footballers coming in with high injury rate, because all the matches had been pushed back, and they were doing all their matches in one go. They were freezing conditions going out, and a lot of injuries in the second half. So they were really supportive of my idea to research it on what would prevent that, what would help that, and approaching the clubs, went out to different clubs, spoke to them, talked through different warm-ups, different procedures, different things that were current at the time, and tried to get that on board as well. And they embraced that, because that was driving change, that was driving empowering prevention. And that's a part of what we're there for as well. It's not just reactivity, dealing with chronic pains all the time. It's also about prevention and being excited about that. And that's where you want to go with it as well, because it isn't just about treating patients like a mill, one patient after the other. As part of your studies, you've learned about preventing. So that's just one example of where you might bring some of your flavour to it and have a little bit of say in it, and quite a bit of say in it, actually. The next thing I would say to you is demands, right? How much is the workload? What's expected of you? And this ties in with one of the other points. What's the role? Now, really look into the role. Physio has lots of realms, and that's the key bit. That's a fantastic bit about it. But really looking into the role of that. Is your role that you will be just seeing patients one after the other? Are you going to be part of classes? Are you going to get, if that's your strong point, will you get enough of time to do that? Will you be part of the hydrotherapy team? Will you be part of the respiratory team? Are you doing on call? All these kind of things have massive implications on your learning, because you're going to be tired if you're not expecting these things. Are you going to get called out in the middle of the night? How do you cope with that? Some folk I know can't stand that, and then there's some folk that wouldn't mind that at all. So really looking into the depths of the role and looking into the organisational structure of it. So who do you report to? Can you, what do you report to them on? Can you feedback? How available are they? Is your team lead part-time? Are they full-time? Do you have scheduled time in the diary? That is sacred time. I call we've got one-to-ones, but we also do clinic time, and that's sacred time. And as much as we can, we formulate that so that you can really nurture things and you can talk about things as well. And that's really important as a team. We've admin that come in, therapists that come in. Sometimes we split halfway and do a sort of training on different things. And that's really important as well, because it's a team. The whole thing is a team. So looking at that role and looking at the demands. In some areas, unfortunately, from physiotherapy, we know that your workload and the work pattern and the environment can be quite high. They can be quite stressful. So really getting into the depths of that. So if you finish a rotation, where might you go? Is that where you really want to go? What are you thinking of there? Can that change? And looking to that, really getting into it. Most of the time, it's all very positive, but really looking into it, because what you spend your time doing now is where you want the foundations for where you're going to be and what you're going to do. So that's vital, really vital, and getting a very good idea of what you're thinking of in that is super important. So they're really the 6 things. I'll summarise this, and you'll see this in the blog as well. So the first thing really is demands. Okay, have a look at your workload, what's expected of you, what's the expected sort of return rate, what's the expected amount of patients you're meant to see, in the time you're meant to see them, the control, how much involvement do you have, whether it's in your diary, whether it's in the service provision, whether it's in injury prevention, for example, whether it's working with a team, how much involvement do you have, how much time do you have to give your say? That's important. And then how much time do you have for implementation of change? So change, as I said, that's the third one. How organisations change, whether large or small, how's it managed? Because that will be a direct implication of the culture, the relationships. On to the next one, the relationships. And the next one, it really affects your role. What you'll end up doing. What will you actually end up doing? So if you go and get a job in community, who's your main caseload? Where are you going to be? What are the social demands in that area? What are the challenges? What are the challenges for that community team? Is that going to work for you? Is that what you really want? So really looking into the depths of that. And the final one, which is one of the really important ones, really is support. Are you going to have consistent support weekly, I would say? Are you going to have an ability to be able to talk to somebody if things aren't going well, if you have questions? We always joke, in MSK, some of the hardest patients come in at 4 o'clock or 4:30 on a Friday evening when everything's closing. And that's what happens. So having that ability then to be able to speak to people and to have that support network in a very positive environment to learn, because you're going to be pushed outside your comfort zone. That's how we progress. You're going to come across challenges. It's just fact, expect it. And that's how we get stronger. That's how we become the best clinicians we can be. So there's some of the things to have a think about, and I'd love to hear more from you. It's probably a little bit different to what you might normally hear as advice on how to get a job and how to accelerate your career, but probably 6 of the top tips at the moment that I think you really need to consider when you're looking at potential job opportunities, whether you're newly qualified or whether you're qualified for years down the line. And it's not just simply a case of does it match into my family life or lifestyle. It's progressing as a person, so your personal development, but also your professional development, and to truly take that on board in order to become the best physio you can be. Okay, so thanks for joining us today. Check out the blog. We're going to have workshops as well, so I get asked questions quite regularly, so we'll be bringing those answers up, but also it's a forum so that you can bring your own questions to it and chat further about different things. Look forward to seeing you then.